to move on now to our next speaker, and I know that Craig has been eagerly waiting to hear from Rosy. Rosy Mondin is the CEO of Quadron Cannatech. And an interesting little factoid about Rosy. Rosy's actually the first female CEO of a cannabis-related public company. So that would be in Canada, but also globally, because as you know, Canada is the only country right now with public companies in the cannabis-related space. So that's an amazing achievement, Rosy. Congratulations. Rosy is a University of Windsor graduate, so Rosy has some roots here in the Windsor-Essex region, and in some ways she's come a little bit home today to come and speak with us. And Rosy was sharing with me last night that she had a whole bunch of signs that were just kind of pointing to the need for her to come back to Windsor. And it was like the moment that Craig called, it was like, everything kind of just came together, and it made a lot of sense. Quadron Cannatech Corporation combines a hands-on understanding of the cannabis industry with seasoned expertise in financial services and capital market industries. What we do know is that in order to create the best cannabis concentrates, you need high-quality raw material and first-class extraction technology. Today, Rosy will speak to extraction technologies and what we can expect in the future. So with no further ado, Rosy, please come on up to the stage.
Thanks very much. Thanks so much for that introduction. Thanks so much for having me. I am actually a graduate of Windsor Law. It's been 22 years since I've been back here, and it's just been fantastic. And honestly, it was a bit of serendipity because I was getting all these Windsor references, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't been back for 22 years, which is just phenomenal to me. And it was literally the night before Craig phoned me, and I said to someone, someone's going to call me. I'm getting drawn back to Windsor, to the area for some reason, and then the next morning you called. So thank you very much for that. The whole cannabis industry is a huge economic opportunity for this region. There's been a lot of growing here already. I remember from when I was back in law school. Full disclosure, I am a cannabis consumer and have been for well over 20 years. I'm not a big drinker. So I've always had my hands in the space for a long time, and I know a lot of growers in the space, and that kind of led me to being in the space myself. I've always been an advocate for the legalization of cannabis. Again, full disclosure, I actually don't hold a medical license, and that's actually for personal reasons, is I just believe that we should be able to have access to this plant. It absolutely works medicinally. I've sat there and I've had tears in my eyes listening to people's stories using this product. It's definitely therapeutic, without a doubt, and it offers an alternative to drinking if you wish to imbibe for intoxicating purposes. So anyone who would listen when I would be on a soapbox for these past many, many years, I would always talk about how legalization is important. Especially being a lawyer and being a consumer, I was always very acutely aware that I was always engaging in illegal activities every time I consumed, every time I purchased, every time I offered it to a friend. Clearly, how this has hit people has been very sad. So I also advocate for amnesty and righting the wrongs of this prohibition. So, and again, that goes back to the root of being a consumer and knowing a lot of growers. So just a bit of credibility into this. In 2012, 13, a lot of these growers that I knew, the MMAR growers, they were the personal production growers, started coming to me for legal help. And that's where I saw the opportunity, and I decided to jump in and get into the space myself. You know, I've been a joint smoker forever, and people just don't like to do that. And it's not in the public health interest to consume cannabis in that way. It's a carcinogen. So looking at other industries and seeing the way industry was set up, that's when I got into it. I looked at it from two aspects. It was the business side of things and advocacy. And I thought, if I'm going to be into this, and as a business leader into a new emerging marketplace, I think it wouldn't behoove me to sit back and not engage with government to try and work on regulations that were fair across the market, that were fair to those who were already growing. I mean, let's not forget, the medical marijuana growers under the MMAR, and I call it marijuana because that's what it was known as at the time, officially. These were the first growers in the world to actually put up their hand and say, I'm okay with having my name on a list to be licensed. The first people in the world. So I do hear a lot of talk about organized crime. I worked on a project with the Canadian Drug Policy Coalition, and I'm from Vancouver, which there is a lot of growing in British Columbia. As we know, BC Bud is quite a well-known brand. And they randomly pulled files from people who had been convicted of crimes, and they found that only 5% were actually involved in organized crime. So what we know is, and then I've talked to some of the top drug policy people and police, that organized crime, and it could be a little different in this region, and I know there could be a strong foothold, but generally organized crime is moving out of the area of this industry. There's just not much money in it for them. They're going into other things. The reason why I advocated for transitioning a lot of the MMR growers into the commercialized framework is really about that. The only way you're going to kill the black market is to bring everybody over into a legalized framework, not only the people, but also their products. Because as we've heard, there's a lot of product out there that's been coming through the under-regulated market because there was a lack by Health Canada to actually regulate those growers. So they were producing products for their patients under the Smith case, which I'll get into, which allowed them to convert their dried product into extracted, concentrated product, because it's in the public health interest to do so, and constitutionally you can't force someone to have to smoke weed. So, Health Canada. So trying to transition these people over to get rid of the black market. I mean, if you look at the legalization, what Health Canada and the federal Liberals were doing by doing this is the mandate is threefold. One is safe product, and you'll have safe and tested product by virtual legalization because it has to go through proper supply channels. The second is protection of youth, and again, with minimum age standards for purchasing, with safe and tested product now in the marketplace, at least now we have a barrier for access, and if they are going to get their hands on it, if the teens are going to get their hands on it, which they likely will, they do with alcohol, there's always a cousin or an uncle, a sister who's going to buy it for them, well, at least now they're getting safe and tested products, again, through legalized supply chain. But to me, the biggest one is trying to impede the black market. And again, the only way to do so is bring everybody into the framework and competition. And that's the game at the end of the day, is you have to be able to compete, and branding is really going to come down to it. So I started the Cannabis Trade Alliance of Canada to work with Health Canada because, again, I think it's important to advocate. And we were the only group in Canada that we recommended breaking up the licensing into licensing categories, segmentation, which we see today. So starting with the nursery class, cultivation, processing, which is broken up into the micros, laboratories come into the framework under the Act, research, and then retail distribution through the provinces. So we were very successful, and I did that not on my own, but collaborated with people from across Canada, put our recommendations in writing, and actually it's what a lot of what we see in the Cannabis Act today. We engaged with the task force across Canada. I've been called to the Senate, to the House of Commons, so just a little bit that I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. Then, as a business model, I saw the opportunity in extraction. We saw it up front because, quite frankly, moving around big bags of weed, it's a bunch of air. Transporting that, the shelf life of that, it just didn't make sense. And if you look at any other industry, especially in plant-based, there's a lot of extraction that does go on. So that's how we started Quadron Cannatech. We put together our first extraction lab in 2014-15, and that's when we brought in a piece of extraction machinery, a CO2 machine, to pull the oils out of the plant, and it was onerous. We had to retrofit the room to bring it in, 3 months of tweaking the machine, HR costs through the roof, and we just thought, this is ridiculous. There has to be a better way. And that's what my business partner looked at me and he said, Rosie, it's a bunch of plumbing. I know I can do better. And he has experience in CO2 and thermal dynamics, which is really important. So that was our foray into it, extraction. I'm just going to talk, so that's just me. Now, extraction generally, this isn't new. Extraction has been around for a long time. The early days of extraction, hand rubs, I don't know if you've heard about that, that comes out of India, Nepal, hash, which is quite popular out here in Ontario, keef, which is the powder, that the trichomes that fall off of the cannabis. Usually when you grind it, you'll see a little powdered form on the bottom of your grinder. That's keef. That's all known as extraction. Then there's tinctures, alcohol-based extractions used medicinally years ago. Again, smoking cannabis in a joint isn't in the public health interest. You're burning something and you're putting that into your lungs. So we want to move away from forcing people to smoke. And right now, I mean, it's really limited. The licensed producers are allowed to have liquid oil and capsules, but the THC levels are low. They're getting a little bit more innovative with some other types of product offerings. But everything, as we've heard, is going to change next year. I will say this. October 17th, 2019 will be the absolute last date that they will allow concentrates. We expect them to come sooner. I'm hoping around the end of summer. The regs are already drafted. They should be out for public comment by the end of this year, if not early January. I'm expecting the end of this year. The reason why we know it's going to be before October is because a federal election is coming. So they can't put out, there's a blackout date, so you can't introduce new legislation within certain dates, and then there has to be the coming into force. So there's some play on time there. So that's why I think around end of summer we'll be seeing something early fall. So extraction is evolving. So early techniques of extraction, you've heard about the explosions that would happen, right? So that was coming from the underground market, the underregulated market, where people were playing around with butane. Extraction can even be done where you take your bud and you take a hair straightener and you put it between parchment paper and you press on it and the heat pushes out the oil. That's an extraction. But we're definitely getting sophisticated, as we've heard many talk, and Vic talk about it, is going industrial, going commercializing. So this is what's happening. So we have different types of solvents that are used in this. Under the medical rules, okay, so let me just go back a bit. Growth of industrial scale. It's evolving because the medical producers, when they were producing for patients, as I mentioned, were producing bud. And then there's a court case called Smith. And what Smith allowed for was these medical producers to now convert their cannabis into an oil form so that that oil, and it was mentioned by Vic too, that it's an ingredient, and I've been calling it a base ingredient. Because if you think about it, you have your cannabis flower, which you smoke in a joint, you put into a bong, or you can vaporize dry, and that's about it. Then you extract the oil from it, and you have this base ingredient now. And if you think about, and we'll come into all the different products that we'll see, and some of we might not have even thought of yet, whether it's these tinctures, whether it's your baked goods, whether it's the vape pen, all of that, it's all based in an extracted-based product. It's all oils or water-soluble. It's all an extract. So Smith allowed these people to make different products, and again, those are the products that we're seeing out today in the underregulated market. And Smith is what allowed the evolution of oils to be adopted by people every day. And the LPs have been severely restricted, and it's unfortunate because you'd think that concentrates would have come up a lot sooner, given that it's in the public health interest to ensure that people aren't smoking weed. The problem is, though, and what people don't think about is just how much legislation is impacted by this change. I mean, I know in BC alone, just on the retail and distribution side, it affected 17 different pieces of legislation. So federally, when we're looking at now putting cannabis, it's being taken out of the schedule, or has been now, and it's under its own act, and we're going to be allowing it to make edibles. Now that brings on to the whole food safety side and all the regulations around that and food processing. So it takes a little while. I think they could have come up with vape pen oil regs sooner than the edibles, rather than lumping those all in together, but it can only fight for so much. All right. So we're into a new era now of extraction tech. So there's different methodologies for extraction. And like I mentioned, extraction is just literally pulling the oils out of the plant. And like I said, you can do that with heat, with a straightening iron. But now we have new methods of doing it that as this is progressing. So CO2 is the first method that we worked on. It's very clean. It's highly efficient in its first initial hours, few hours or so, and makes an excellent clean product, excellent for vape pens. After that, there's also ethanol, which is greater for big batch processing. It maintains a lot of the elements of the plant. You can have your chlorophyll in there. It's a very nice whole spectrum oil. If you extract with ethanol at very, very, very cold temperatures, it as well makes a very nice vape oil. We have our CO2, we've got our booth at the back, so make sure and go to talk to Justin. I'm not going to be plugging the company too much because I'm trying to just give a little education on extraction, but we've got our CO2 machine. It's a 45-liter vessel that holds 20 pounds, 9 liters of feedstock, and we're working on an ethanol extractor as well. It's a small one, and we're ramping up, and that one does 1,000 pounds a day of extraction. So those are the two big ones, and I think every extraction facility will absolutely have CO2 and will absolutely have ethanol. There's also cold water. And what I'd mentioned earlier was butane, hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon is this big scary thing because, you know, there was the blow-ups in these home grows from it. But, you know, hydrocarbon is used in food production for extraction, and if it's done well, it also makes a great product. You want to do it in an explosion-proof room. Everything needs to be certified in C1, Div 1, C1 rooms. So again, it's all maturing. And as the industry matures, we're seeing the need for innovation. We're seeing the need for efficiency. And we're seeing the need for I lost my train of thought. Efficiency, innovation, and automation. So automation is really important. And actually, we've got 3 subsidiaries. Soma Labs, which does the manufacturing of our equipment. Cybernetic Control Systems is actually our engineering firm that focuses on automation technology. And Green Mantle Products is our third, and that does our consumer devices. Our vape pens is the first one that we've come out with. Okay, so I've already talked about this enough. The key is finding alternatives for people to consume. So the different method of consumption also gives you different desired effects. One of the big things with Health Canada is pushing to make sure that they don't limit the concentration amounts in the products that are going to be coming out for the extracts. For example, a vape pen. Right now, the liquid oils under the ACMPR Cannabis Act was 3% THC in liquid oil form, 1% in capsules. You can't have that with a vape pen. And if they tell you not to have a high concentration, then my question to Health Canada is, well, what are you forcing us to dilute it with? Don't want to be diluting. We don't know whether PG should be inhaled into your lungs. Probably not. MCT oil, should that be inhaled into your lungs? We don't really know yet. So we'd rather just have purity. So if you're not being forced to cut to dilute down, it's better as well. It's the desired effect. When you're puffing on a vape pen, you want an instant feel from that. And it'll dissipate quickly versus an edible. If you've got a lot of pain, you'll want something that the uptake is a little slower, but it's going to last a lot longer. Suppositories. That's very, very effective, especially on the medical side. Effective for men with prostate cancer, effective for women who have menstrual cramp issues, effective for women who are postmenopausal. The reason why is you can have very, very high THC in a suppository form, but it bypasses the liver. So you get all of the medicinal benefits of your THC, but it doesn't get you high. So many products that can come out of this. And again, oils, concentrates, extracts, it's the base ingredient for everything, right? So capsules we talked about, suppositories I just mentioned, edibles, vape pens, bath bombs, beautiful bath bombs, CBD, just takes a little bit of the edge off, creams. A lot of us have aging parents, and they're turning to cannabis, right? They're wanting to supplement all their opioids and all the prescriptions that they're taking. Arthritis is a big issue. So if they're a little scared of ingesting the cannabis, well, what a great way to start by putting a topical on, right? Very, very effective for people. Lubricants, we were talking, Dan mentioned women for women, right? So sexual lubricants, sounds funny, but they're out there. They're out there in the US. Tinctures, which have been around forever, cooking oils, sprays, and that's just scratching the surface, right? Beverages, did I put it on there? I can't wait for beverages. Personally, again, I'm not a big alcohol drinker, so be able to go out with my friends and be able to order a drink that doesn't have booze in it, I can't wait. Okay, science. Science, science. This is what's really exciting about legalization, actually, is now finally we can have the scientists come and study all this. Like I said, the carrier oils, what do we know about it? What can we put into our lungs? What are we exhaling? How much THC is being exhaled? How much of the CBD is being exhaled when you take it that way? The effects of the endocannabinoid system and how it uptakes all the cannabis. We're just starting. And again, you have to remember, because this was illegal for so long, illegal for 95 years, but think about this for a sec. It's actually been legal longer than it's been illegal. And we already know millions and millions and millions of people use this product. So this is a product now that science will come and quantify all the anecdotal evidence that's been going on for years. So that's really exciting about science and just the innovation that's going to come out and how it's going to push this industry forward. For us, the science is huge because it's been all about R&D. Equipment manufacturing, I'll tell you, it ain't cheap. And it costs a lot of money, and we've made a lot of mistakes. But we are people in the cannabis industry creating equipment and processes and solutions for the cannabis industry. What we found coming into this is a lot of the engineers and technicians who work in this, they build machines, but they're never going to use the machine. They don't really care about ROI, which is your return on investment. For us, it's all about getting you to efficiency, getting your machine working, getting your products out there. And so you're making money. I mean, isn't this the whole point of it? Not only are we passionate about this product and we want to share it with the world, but hey, let's face it, this is a business and we're all here to make money. So we keep hearing about innovation, and that's 100% true. You always have to stay above the curve. This is just a little timeline. I keep looking at the wrong place. So just what the processes involved, starting from biomass preparation, is you have to make sure it's really dry, and you want to mill it down and then put it through all the processes. The easiest example I can just give on what extraction is all about is just think about the oil and gas industry. I know you guys like this one. It's very rudimentary, but when you pull oil out of the ground, you get crude. And it's the same thing. Your first pass with cannabis, you're pulling out crude. And it looks like peanut butter coming out of the CO2 machine anyways. That's your first process. Then what you do is you pull out the fats and waxes and separate it from the oil. Winterization process. Then you have your raw oil. And then from there, you can sell that raw oil bulk, or you now take fractions out of it. There's short path distillation, fractionation, where you're actually now isolating the compounds. So back to oil and gas, you have crude, then you start refining it. Then you have crude diesel, gasoline, all the way up to jet fuel. Kind of similar. So you refine all the way up, you pull out all your compounds, and then you have an array. You'll have your THC oil, you'll have your CBD oil, maybe your CBN oil. And if you think about the perfumery industry, same idea. You have your array of botanicals. Now you start formulating. So formulation sciences. This is actually really important. So again, we've spent, many people have been focusing their production methodology and solutions on the cultivation side. We've been doing this on the extraction side. So we've spent 3 years figuring out the bottlenecks, figuring out efficiencies, working on innovation, making mistakes, failing, spending lots of money, but that's how you learn. So everyone's got their expertise, and this is our expertise. And I can tell you through our expertise is if you change your recipe by even 0.01% on a mixing of, let's say, your terpene that you put into your formula, you change that at all and it changes your whole recipe. Terpenes eat into your plastic. So as you're working with vape pens, they'll chew away at your plastic. These are all things, even how you prime your wicking. It all matters. So I don't have to go through this too much. We already know that the benefits, it's just cleaner, healthier. It's the way to go, and it's the way of the future. Vaporizers. This is what we can't wait to come out. I think because all the years that I've been smoking and smoking joints, I always offer it to my friends over 20 years. Hey, do you want a puff? Hey, do you want a puff? Nope, nope, nope. But now, hey, Rosie, do you have a vape pen? It's all I ever hear. So it's really interesting because it was always no. So now again, you're probably wondering, what do you mean she's been doing this for 3 years? How? Well, we've set up laboratories under the MMAR so that they can make products for their patients. And really is for their patients. What we've made, you can't just find it out there. And so when we've received feedback from patients from across Canada that love what we've done for them. So I'm so excited to be able to come out into the legalized framework recreationally to personally, with our company, to be able to provide product offerings. We actually just announced that we have a financial interest in a processing facility in Mississauga, so I'm excited about that. So vaporizers. What we've done, so through our subsidiary Green Mantle, is we've been working on vape pens because you want to provide a solution and the end of it if you're in the oils business. But just buying a vaporizer, a pen off of Alibaba and sticking your oil in it ain't going to cut it. It'll gunk up. It might work for a little bit. I remember the first disposable vape pen I bought in San Diego in 2012. And I went back to the dispensary 3 times because they guaranteed it was 120 pulls, and 5, it died. 20, it died. The battery died. It gunked up. It was pulling the oil through the pen itself. So it's not just about buying up a vape pen from China and throwing an oil in there. You have to make sure the pen works. You have to make sure the wicking will work efficiently with the oil. The air intake matters. The battery resistance matters. So much of it matters. And in the end, it all comes around branding. People have asked me, well, will you just sell the hardware? And we did at first. But what happens is then I don't have any control. So we make sure our vape pens work with the oils. But if I sell out some empty cartridges and someone sticks an oil in there that's perhaps made with butane, it might not work efficiently with our pens. And now suddenly I've ruined my brand. So I don't want to do that. So we keep that tight and work with us, and we set you up with vape pens. We've got a whole bunch. We're getting away from disposables of course, for environmental reasons. So we have flip unit ones that are cartridge-based. We have the ones that are cartridges tied into it, which are disposable, but actually they're kind of not because they last longer because each one is actually rechargeable itself. So single-use rechargeable. Let's see. Where am I? How am I doing with time? Okay. Oops. All right. Oh, I'm talking, not even following my slides. Okay. Big surprise. Okay, so here's my company, Quadron. We're publicly traded on the CSE. We listed for trading in 2017. So we do industrial grade manufacturing equipment. Following consistent supply processes. We started out in 2014, as I mentioned. So what we'll do is we will sell our equipment outright. But most importantly, because we spent these 3 years figuring out the processes and creating efficiencies, is that we will work with growers to set up your processing facilities. So we'll set them up and sell them outright. And we will also work strategically with key partners to have an interest in facilities. I'd like to have 5 to 8 across Canada. For us, it's international. Just like everyone else talks about it, we can sell our equipment around the world. We have a manufacturing partner in Washington, and we are really just coming out of development. We're pretty excited. The LPs, everyone is starting to think about extraction more and more. Everyone's been focusing on cultivation because that was allowed. But now everyone's turning their mind to this huge opportunity because it really is an incredible opportunity on the extraction market. One number that I like to bring up quite a bit is couple of years ago, Mackey Research looked at the consumption data coming out of the US in the legalized states, and they have a lot of product offerings out there because they've allowed extract-based products. And looking at the data from the US, importing it into Canada and making some assumptions, they predicted that in 5 years, so it's probably about down to 3 now, that there would be a 1,600% increase in the consumption of dried floured products, mostly in the form of pre-roll joints. Makes sense. People really, rolling a joint is onerous. It's a pain in the neck. A lot of people that I know still can't roll one after 20 odd years. They're always asking me to. I'm tired of doing it. But the more significant number is the increase in the consumption of concentrate-based products, and that number is 198,000%. So that is where the industry is going, without a doubt. It's exciting. It's all about branding, right? So as Health Canada is going to have to open this up a little bit. Again, going back to the black market, how do you differentiate products that are from the under-regulated to the regulated? You have to be able to have brands. You have to be able to walk into a store and choose a brand. Just like, here, I'll give you another example. And I gave this example to the Senate, and they seem to love it. When I walk into a liquor store and I want to buy a bottle of wine, and I'm not saying I hate alcohol. I do I'm Italian, for God's sake, so I remember when my dad used to put up the garbage. I probably shouldn't say this, but yeah, his moonshining days. Anyways, so I walk into a liquor store, right? BC. I'll choose a BC wine, but for this sake, J-Lore is a brand everyone knows. So I do buy J-Lore, and I'll buy their Cab Sauvignon. Why do I buy J-Lore? It's not the cheapest wine on the shelf. It's not the most expensive. But I buy it because every time I buy that bottle of wine, I know it's going to give me a consistent product each and every time. Do I care whether J-Lore, the vineyard itself, is growing their own grapes? Probably not really. What I care about is whatever they're doing, whether they source the most excellent varietals to make that bottle of wine, their processes to make that bottle of wine. All I care about is when I go and grab that brand at that price point and I take it home and share it with my friends, that I know it's going to be a good, consistent product. That's what this industry is going to get to. So eventually, it is going to come up to branding. It's all about moving brands around the globe. Moving brands is done by having strategic partnerships, because you don't necessarily always want to go in and license yourself in a new environment where you don't understand the regulations and you're a newcomer there. So you strategically line yourself up, and you move brands around the world. So that's where I see it all going. I think it's all going to be an extraction. I think we, as a company, are incredibly well positioned because we've been working on this for a few years. I'm like a crouching tiger. I'm ready to go. And I think that's all I really need to say. How are we doing? That's it. Yeah, that's enough. Oh, was there questions?
Yeah, let's see. Are there any questions out there? I have some crowdsourced ones.
Or just come to our table.
Yeah, Rosie's going to be sticking around. I do have a question for you, though. And this is from Dodge Dude, one of our community members that's here. Yeah. Can we expect a transference of knowledge and experience into the legal extraction community, such as individuals who understand butters, shatters, wax of today's illicit market? Can the consumer expect concentrates on par with the current expectations of the black market?
Well, that's why I talked about the importance of transitioning people and products over. So absolutely. I think that's the knowledge pool that's really out there, that they've been doing this for a long time. Now, they still are going to have to compete with the scientists. Let's face this. Like I said, this is becoming commercialized. It's sophistication. And there are chemists that are coming in and playing around with this. So it's all about being able to compete. And it's all about increasing your knowledge base. So staying up to date, coming to conferences, going and learning about it. More and more educational institutes are having courses now in this. This is what's the most exciting to me, and really why I advocated for the breaking up of licensing classes, is by having segmented licensing allows pathways for different people to come in. The way the ACMPR was set up, sure, you could check the box to be just an oil producer, but that was really limited limiting. But basically, to get into that process and the vault requirements that were needed, 2013, 2014, it was onerous and so expensive. So how is a craft grower supposed to get into the industry? It was ridiculous that you're forcing someone to have to cultivate all the way. Look, if I want to sell a house, I don't have to plant the tree, fell the tree, figure out my financing, build a house, and just to sell it at the end. That's how the ACMPR was originally set up by Harper to do. So by having different pathways, by having segmented licensing, now you can have specialization come in. And what's really exciting is because this is really now a real industry, we're going to have kids in high school, in grade 11, saying, you know what, I'm going to go into university and I want to focus on crop sciences and I want to focus on cannabis. Or I'm an engineer and I want to focus on extraction technologies and engineering. Or I want to go into branding, advertising, customer, whatever it might be. This is a real industry and it's going to attract lots of opportunities. So the economic opportunities for this region are huge. For people to continue their development, their education, it's huge. This is just the beginning. It's not too late. This is 4 minutes and 20 seconds into the first period of a hockey game. This is early days. When we see thousands of licenses across Canada, then we have a robust industry. 120 licenses right now is not a true industry. So segmentation, nurseries, coming into geneticists, coming into the micros, cultivation, the farming, the processing, all of that. There's so many opportunities.
And that's why she's the bomb.
Thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you.